Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
He needs care and treatment.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Is this a great country or what?
Locking down the middle of the day, live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Got Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos, and plenty to do on our final show of 2025. Should the Saints pay Chris Olave? How much should they pay Chris Olave if they pay him? We'll talk about it in 15 minutes. Glen West along in 30 minutes talking Tigers as they got a big win on the hardwood last night. Not necessarily in terms of the scale of the game, but in the margin of victory. Tigers got a big win there. We'll talk about it in the second hour as well. The NFL All-Rookie team, according to ESPN, with 1 week to go. Saints got a pretty hefty presence on that. We'll talk about it at the end of the hour. And Sharif Ishak along at 2:30. Plus, got to get you ready for the college football playoff because they're going to play all four of these playoff games before we meet again on Friday. So for the last time this year, let's crank things up with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
So the transfer portal opens coming up on Friday, right? January 2nd, transfer portal opens. And you're thinking, once it opens, there's been guys going in the transfer portal for 2 weeks. Well, they're announcing their intention to go in the transfer portal. Guys can start taking visits, committing places, actually making moves starting on January the 2nd. And as you all are very well aware, LSU is going to be extremely active in that portion of the college football calendar. What I wanted to get a feel for is just how active. So I went through the entire roster with scholarship players. I took the players off who were out of eligibility, and the players who have declared their intention to enter the transfer portal, I took off this list as well. Now, I'm well aware, and I think you are too, there are potentially players who have announced their decision to go in the transfer portal who will come back to LSU. There are also players on the current LSU roster that have not declared to go in the transfer portal that probably will coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So this is not a final list. It's a working list of where LSU's roster sits. I was just curious on numbers, and I'll tell you all this. I've got a good feel for who's on the roster in August and when LSU's playing in games. Could I swear to you I knew what class they were all in or how many years of eligibility they had left? No. That part I used to know like the back of my hand when they would just come in, either redshirt or not, and then play, and I could feel like now you got guys who they're on their third school, or maybe they're at a JUCO, or finally you got the COVID year guys that are rolling off, and like it's been complicated. So I wanted to just like go back and look at this and say, okay, what does LSU have right now? I'm confident this is what Billy Glasscock and Lane Kiffin have been doing for 3 weeks, but I have it, so I did it. Now, this is going to be relatively difficult to follow. I'll try to make it as simple as possible, and I think you'll have a good idea of where LSU is headed here as well. And again, this is a working list. It's not a final list, but you know where you are at quarterback. Nussmeier's gone. Hurley's going to the portal. You got Michael Van Buren. You got one. You got to go work at quarterback. Is it Trinidad Chambliss? I don't know. Is it Sam Levitt? I don't know. DJ Lagway? I don't know. Deuce Knight from Auburn just declared he's going in the portal. Former five-star recruit, showed some flashes late in the season. Like, okay, there's a lot of options. There will be a lot of options. LSU's got to get busy. At quarterback, you've got one. At running back, technically you've got three. You got Caden Durham and Harlem Berry, who finished the season with you. Both guys have eligibility left. Berry was a freshman. Durham was a sophomore. And then JT Lindsey's still on the roster. He's been out dealing with legal matter, result of early and fall camp. I don't know what his future holds. You got to get running backs, too. And it's going to be expensive. Harlem Berry's going to be expensive. Caden Durham's probably expensive. And Keywan Lacey would be expensive. LSU can't talk about him. I'm a talk show host. I can talk about him. He'd be expensive. But you got three guys, and one of them's not with the team. You got to go get running backs, too. You don't have a high school signed at either one of those positions. So quarterback and running back, got to have them. Tight end, Trey'Daz Green. We think he's back. J.D. LaFleur just redshirted. He's likely back. Donovan Green has another year of eligibility. So you got 3 tight ends, plus you signed one in the class. So that would be 4. You've got a star in Trey'Dez Green. You've got a guy who looks physically ready to play in J.D. LaFleur. Donovan Green certainly can help you in goal line situations. He's a big body. Plus, you've got a freshman coming in. Like, you're okay at tight end. Wide receiver. You got 5 guys that I'm counting that look like they're coming back next year. Because Aaron Anderson's already declared for a all-star game. And Chris Hilton's out of eligibility. And Barryon Brown's out of eligibility. And Xavion Thomas is out of eligibility. So you got 5 guys I count. Kyle Parker, Nick Anderson, Destin Hill, and then you got Phillip Wright and Teron Francis out of the freshman class. That's 5 guys. It would surprise me if all 5 of those guys were back next year, quite frankly. That would surprise me a little bit. But right now, Kyle Parker, Nick Anderson, Destin Hill, Phillip Wright, Teron Francis. You've got 3 signed in this class that Lane Kiffin and his offensive staff have kind of handpicked. You got 2 guys that were very much leaning to Ole Miss and Oklahoma, that ended up at LSU, and then you, of course, bring in one of the top players in the state from down in New Orleans. So you got 8 guys at wide receiver, but I feel like that's a place that LSU will be shopping. 8's a big number. I don't think all 8 will end up at LSU. I think you're going to have maybe 1 or 2 transfers from the returning class. And then you got a couple freshmen that you really want to lean on those. I think that LSU will go after tight end, but right now it looks like 8. Offensive line is a spot that we talked about a little bit yesterday, but at offensive line, I count 8 guys right now, and that doesn't include Braylon Moore. You'll hear that, but 8 guys right now who are on the roster, on scholarship, that could come back. Tyler Miller, Solomon Thomas, Ethan Callaway, Weston Davis, Kyrie Lee, Braylon Moore, Bo Bordelon, Brett Bordelon. 8 guys. You signed 2 in this class. That's 10. That is nowhere near enough, and a lot of these guys have not played a lick. Like Tyler Miller hadn't played a lick, Solomon Thomas hadn't played a lick, Ethan Callaway hadn't played a lick, Kyrie Lee hadn't played a lick, and then Brett Bordelon hadn't played a lick. 5 of the 8 that are returning have not played. Now, Braylon Moore would be huge to get back, obviously. Bo Bordelon is a depth piece that will be back. And then Weston Davis is a really talented guy who had a tough first year starting in the SEC. You've got 2 guys signed. 10 is not even close. I said the number I used yesterday was 6. I think you got to get 6. Now, whether some of the guys that are in the portal, like Carius Kern or like Tyree Adams, like if you can get those guys back, great. But there's going to be turnover there, and you got to go get a lot of guys. You got to get 3, absolutely have to get 3 starters that I didn't name there. Absolutely have to get 3 starters. I think you got 6 total. So you're not even close on the offensive line. Now, defensive line, wildly enough, is the spot where your defensive coach left. Kyle Williams is gone. And you still have huge numbers on the defensive line. Don McKinley, Walter Mathis, then you got the freshmen, Brandon Brown, Zion Williams, Sean Washington can come back. Then on the edge, you got C.J. Jackson, Damian Shanklin, Gabe Relaford, Kalaj Cobbins, Dylan Carpenter. That's 10 guys. And you signed 4, the best defensive line coach class in the country. You got Richard Anderson. You got Lamar Brown. You got Deuce Gerald. You got Trenton Henderson. So to go with 10 guys on that list coming back, you signed 4. That's 14 guys on the defensive line. Now, how good do you feel about some of these names? Freshman and Brandon Brown, Zion Williamson, Sean Washington, who would be a senior, who hasn't really played. Rest of those guys have been depth pieces. Like, maybe you got to go shopping on the defensive line, but as far as numbers go, that's 14 guys. That's a decent amount on the defensive line. Linebacker, you were very young there as far as your depth goes. Some of that's growing up. Now, Devon Keys, Tylen Singleton, those are the 2 lead dogs from the bowl game. But I'm not ruling Whit Weeks out at this point at all. He's right there. His younger brother, Zach, played as a freshman a little bit this year. And in Zach's class, you got Charles Ross, who I know this staff is very high on. You got Jaden Breaker. You got Keelan Moses. You've got depth, and you got some talent there at linebacker. That's 7 guys. Now, you didn't sign one in this class. You got 7 guys at linebacker. And I think, you add one starter and have him come in and compete. Maybe Whit Weeks moves on and you bump that number down to 6, and you definitely got to go get somebody. But they've got some good numbers at linebacker. Corner, they got to go shopping. You got DJ Pickett and PJ Woodland that are back. Then you got Jakeem Jackson and Aiden Anding who could come back. But that's it. You signed 2, and you feel very good about Haven Finney. So that's 6, 7. You got to go get more. You got to go get a corner or two, and you've got the best cornerback recruiter in the country out there with Mansour Lane now attached to him. Hey, this guy was third team All-ACC at Virginia Tech. He's going to be like the 13th pick in the draft. Come on down. And I think LSU can get one, but you need somebody opposite Pickett and Woodland to let Anding grow up, let Jackson be a depth piece, and you don't want to count on Haven Finney too quickly as a freshman. So corner, you got to go get somebody. And then safety, you got good numbers at safety. Jake Olson stocked those shells well. You got TaMarcus Cooley, you got Deshaun Spears, still got Joel Rogers, Jacob Bradford, Jace Thomas, who I know the staff's very high on, CJ Jim Coley, who played a good bit in the bowl game as well, who's got great size as a freshman this past year. That's 6 guys, and you signed 2 more. You signed Aiden Hall, obviously, big get there. Like you got 8 safeties between the returners and your high school. I don't think you need to go shopping too hard there as well. So that's a lot to go through, but ultimately, and I realize I'm leaving out kickers and punters, long snappers if they're on scholarship. There are some specialists, but ultimately, you had 47 returners and 14 signees that are the ink is dry. That's 61. 61 is where you're at right now. You got to go get 25 more. You got to go get 28 more. That's the numbers you're looking at here for LSU. 25, 28 more players that you're going to have to go get, because not everybody that I listed on this sheet is going to be back. I told you I didn't think all the wide receivers would be back. It would surprise me if all the running backs were back. I included Durham, Berry, and Lindsey on that. It would surprise me if all these defensive linemen came back. It would surprise me if all the offensive linemen came back. It would surprise me if all the wide receivers came back. So, like, you're at 61 right now, and I expect more attrition. That could be down to 58, 57. You may have to go get 30 guys. Like, that's what you're looking for in this portal class. And the positions that you absolutely positively must address: quarterback, you've got 1. Running back, you've got a generous 3. Offensive line, you've got 10. That's way short. Corner, you've got 6. Not enough. Those have got to be addressed, and I think they got to get a wide receiver too. So it's a daunting task, but it's one that Lane Kiffin has had the entire month to prepare for. No bowl game, no playoff. He assembled the staff pretty quickly. You have your exit meetings. You determine which guys you want to keep around, which guys you think may need to move on. You present revenue sharing numbers to the guys on your roster. You're talking to agents. Lane Kiffin said that on the telecast on Saturday night. You got to be loaded and ready for bear on Friday. And it would stun me if LSU didn't have multiple commitments between Friday and Monday morning. Monday's show. Let's call it Monday's show for me. Monday at 1 o'clock. I think LSU will have guys ready to roll. That's what I think. Now, visits have to happen. Not everything has to go really, really fast. And there are some positions that are more important than others. LSU simply must address quarterback and offensive line with authority. But you got a long way to go from a numbers perspective, because right now, 47 plus 14 is generous. That's 61. I bumped that down to 44, 43, and 14, and you're talking about 57, 58 players. That ain't going to get it. So LSU's got to be very, very aggressive in how they pursue this transfer portal, and you brought Lane Kiffin in to do just that. So it would surprise me if he did not. It's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be a wild time, and we'll have a tracker up at LouisianaSports.net starting on Friday that'll just start rolling in these commitments as they come. And I expect it to be very, very busy for 3 weeks down here in Baton Rouge as LSU tries to put together a roster for 2026. It's just very, very short on numbers at this point, as you would expect with a coaching change, is what it is. That's our opening drive, brought to you by Fabry, Chevrolet, and GMC. Chris Olave, what's the future hold? What's next?
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. 30 years. He tells me all the time about something that he's seeing a good bit of at this point, which is if your house was built around 1990, around 1995, maybe even as late as 2000, and it was built with one of those classic 90s, late 80s bathrooms with the big standing shower on one side and then the huge jacuzzi tub in the middle. You never get in the jacuzzi tub. The jacuzzi tub doesn't work anymore. You have no use for it. It just takes up a ton of space. Look how much space that takes up. Consider if it was a walk-in shower. You're going, well, I already have a shower. We can take that shower out, put it in a linen closet, use it more effectively, more efficiently, and do something to the aesthetic of your bathroom and the functionality of your bathroom. That's what David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets do all the time. If you're thinking, yeah, That sounds great, but, I mean, do I have to cut a huge check right now? No. You can finance it. 0% up to 18 months. That's same as cash. You got time to pay that off and make a huge difference in your bathroom. So go with the team that's been doing it for 30 years. Go with the team that's licensed, that's bonded, that's insured. Go with One Bath and Closets. Check them out online and get that free consultation at onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
Tuesday show is brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners, licensed realtor in Louisiana and Mississippi. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in Baton Rouge, there's nobody better to call than Daryl May. He's lived here his entire life. Born and raised in Baton Rouge, Catholic high grad, now calls St. Francisville home. So whether you're looking in the middle of the city, in the heart of the city, or outside the city limits, maybe somewhere life moves a little slower, Daryl May understands both. He can help you out with that. Plus, he spent better than 20 years as a builder. He knows the kind of construction that you should be looking for as a buyer as well. So buying, selling a home, Daryl May, Remax Partners, happy to help you out. DarylMayProperties.com, DarylMayProperties.com. You know, there are a lot of happy people in New Orleans these days. Saints have won 4 in a row. Feel like you got your quarterback. You know, that makes Kellen Moore happy as a first-year head coach, no doubt. Got to make Tyler Shuck happy. He's now a starting quarterback in the NFL, playing great. I think Mickey Loomis probably feeling pretty good right about now. That whole crew, Kai Harley and the whole front office, just people out and about the streets need to be happy in the city of New Orleans. But among the happiest, I'm not going to give you official happiness power rankings, but among the happiest, I'm thinking Chris Olave. Why is that? Well, it's potential extension season for Chris Olave right now. And those talks, we understand, have been ongoing between New Orleans and their number one wide receiver. The Saints have picked up his fifth-year option as a first-round pick. And next year, Chris Olave is set to count about $15.5 million towards the cap. That's where it's headed for the final year of that rookie deal. So the question is, do you need to extend Chris Olave? And I believe the answer to that is yes. I believe the answer to that is yes, based on a number of different factors. And I have been critical at times of Chris Olave over the last couple of years. I think he's had some drops. I think there have been some contested catches I would like a guy to go up and make. But here's the deal. These conversations now are being shifted over the last month because the Saints are about to hit a period of a couple of years where they've got a quarterback on the cheap. This is very rare in the NFL, and it can impact how you spend money with your salary cap structure. So if you're going to have Tyler Shuck on this rookie deal for a second-round pick, all of a sudden, I can get a little bit more loose with my spending. So for Chris Olave, who is a proven commodity in the NFL, his rookie season in 2022, just over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. Had 72 catches. That was the targets number I was looking at. 72 catches. The next year he built on that. 87 catches. He had 5 touchdowns. And he went for 1,123 yards. Now, last year we know injuries, concussions, limited him to 8 games. Not going to hold a 400-yard season against him. But this year, comes back, going to play a full season this year. He's over 1,100 yards again, and he's almost doubled his touchdown output. He had 10 in his first 3 years. He's got 9 this year. And now he's got a quarterback who's getting him the football. And so Chris Olave, at his age 25 season, is going to have, he's already put 3,000-yard years in the bank. Already put him in. You know, if Chris Olave is healthy, 22-year-old rookie, 23-year-old second-year player, 25-year-old fourth-year player, if you get the full slate of games from Chris Olave, you get 1,000 yards, you get somewhere in the neighborhood of 6, 8, 9 touchdowns. That's something I can build with. Now, I want to extend Chris Olave. I want to pay Chris Olave. I want him to be on this team. I want him to continue building around Tyler Shuck. I need that piece to the puzzle to continue to bring Shuck along. But the question is, okay, how much? And you look at the top of the wide receiver market, And you look at Jamar Chase, who set the market at $40 million a year. Then you got Justin Jefferson, who was right before him, at $35 million a year. And then right below those guys in a stair-step metric from 3 to 5, you've got CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, and Garrett Wilson, all just north of $32.5 million, between $32.5 and $34 million. I don't consider Chris Olave in that class right now. But when you start getting down to Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill now, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, closer to $27 million, okay, I can really get on board with that. Now, I don't know how Chris Olave feels about 27.5 as opposed to 32. Not my $5 million to get or to pay. But I want to pay Chris Olave around the 15th, 16th receiver in the NFL. He's on my roster. He's being very productive. Do I think he's a dominant player like Jamar Chase is when he's at his best? Like Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb are at their best? I don't get those senses from Chris Olave. I don't think he's about to rip off 1,800 yards and 14, 15, 17 touchdowns. I don't think that. But he's a good player who wants to be in New Orleans, who's got a relationship with this new quarterback, and he's producing when he's healthy, and he's been healthy 3 out of the 4 years. And now that I have this extra money, because I'm giving my quarterback the rookie deal for the second round, it's time to start spending on guys that are going to help now. Like, it's time to go. That's what this month has done for me. I'm not going crazy. We're not giving him CeeDee Lamb $34 million a year. I don't want to do that. But if you can get Chris Olave under contract for $27.5, $28 million, okay. I'm okay with that. Do I think that's exactly where he fits in the league? No. But you realize that there are going to be guys in the next 2 years who sign their extensions that are going to jump over the top of that. And then all of a sudden, he's the 23rd highest paid receiver in the league. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I didn't even think that paying Chris Olave significant money in this offseason means you can't draft a wide receiver with your first pick in the draft. I would be in favor of drafting another wide receiver who would be on a rookie deal, who would be a very manageable money deal. And then all of a sudden, if you just look at your wide receiver room, where you've got Vele coming back, you've got Olave where you're spending the big bucks, and then you've got a rookie, all of a sudden, if I take the room and look at the money I'm spending on it, it's not exorbitant. It's not like the Bengals that right now have Jamar Chase for $40 million a year, who's the number one receiver, and then right down the list, you've got T. Higgins, who is making a monstrous amount of money as well at $28.7 million. And the Bengals have more than that. They have $69 million invested at wide receiver. I'm looking at the Saints, and they would have somewhere in the neighborhood of 35. It's half. So I'm all about extending Chris Olave at this point. My tune has changed because Tyler Shuck has changed it. And there's just nothing that impacts a roster structure more so than a quarterback, which is the highest paid position in the league, making relative peanuts and playing really good football. And you look back at what Olave's done the last month in extensions time against Tennessee, talking about 8 catches, $119 touchdown. Against the Jets, 10 catches, $148, 2 touchdowns. Carolina, 6 catches, but 85 yards, touchdown. He's making plays because his quarterback got the ability to do it. And by the way, the defenses know he's got to make the play. You scared of Mason Tipton out there? You terrified of Pettis? No. You know they know that Olave's the guy. And still, he's getting things done. Now, the Titans, Jets, and Panthers aren't exactly the cream of the crop. Carolina might win the division, but still, this is the NFL, and it's not just a 3-game sample size. This is a 4-year sample size where Chris Olave, when given the full complement of games, all of a sudden becomes a 1,000-yard receiver. And again, I'm not suggesting he's a top 8 receiver in the NFL, but I'm looking at this at dollars and cents. And if I've got Vele on a rookie deal, and I can maybe draft one in the first or second round this year, And then I've got Tipton, who's inexpensive and a guy you can take a flyer on. And then you've got Olave, who's stirring the drink, who's your consistent guy. Okay, that makes a ton of sense to me. There are other needs. I'd like to see an edge rusher. I don't hate the idea of offensive line. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't hate the idea of grabbing a running back. But paying Olave, if that's the nuts and bolts of this discussion right now, I'm in. Give the guys extension. Let's keep him here for multiple years. Let's let Tyler Shuck grow up with him. I think it's an awesome idea. He's not old. He is productive. It's not a huge injury history. He hadn't been a malcontent at all. I think you give him his money. I think it's that time. Those are my thoughts on Chris Olave. Jordan, you got thoughts on Chris Olave?
I think you definitely need to pay him at this point in time where you're looking at, like you said, Shuck is going to be – I mean, I ain't going to say he's making pennies, but he ain't making top dollar like these other NFL quarterbacks.
God, no.
Yeah, he's not going to be making top dollars, not pennies, but you're going to be in a spot where, like the Texans, where C.J. Stroud came along and then they started getting Stephon Diggs and, paid Nico Collins and brought all these different receivers in to try and, make it all work. So I can see a world where you do pay Olave, obviously not the top dollar like the A.J. Brown numbers you were saying and Garrett Wilson's, but you got to find a way to make it work, but also find a way to make that work, but bring in somebody that complements him well in this draft or free agency. We'll see where that goes, but definitely in the draft, you need to find somebody that can complement him well.
I wish we would have gotten more of Shuck and Vele. We got a quick snippet that looked good. And then we lost it. And it was only 2-3 games that we lost, but I just wish you would have. That would have been a better data point to go into the draft with.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay if you take one in the first round. I don't know where you're picking 10, 8, 11, whatever. But I'm not against getting a wide receiver to complement him. And again, you're looking at it as a position group investment, not necessarily at one guy.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense.
And I think that will also open up Olave's game because next year he's going to have a season where he had 100 catches, over 1,000 yards, almost 10 touchdowns, probably has 10 touchdowns right now. Yeah, he's going to be on the game plan for other teams next year. So you need a guy that's going to open that up for him where they're going to try and take him away. Vele can eat. This receiver you're bringing can eat. Somebody else is going to have to eat because they're going to find a way to take him away.
Glen West, Talking Tigers next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Ochsner, not a new partner here. We certainly had our conversations every other Monday, but we'll be telling you about him every single day here on the Hunt Palmer Show. And obviously this time of year, the end of the year and the beginning of the new year, everybody starts to think about some fitness goals. That's a very popular talking point. But a lot of times, all of a sudden, February rolls around and then the gym's empty. Well, at Ochsner Health, they've got a solution for you here to put some goals in place. Maybe put a 5K on your schedule or maybe say, I want to add this much muscle. Make those goals measurable. Track your workouts, time your runs, log your reps. Keep it achievable. Don't go 7 days a week, crazy, running distances you've never run before. Stay realistic and choose those goals that work with your lifestyle. If you make small changes, they're more likely to stick. And then the most important thing they say at the end here is to give yourself a time frame, a target date where you can reach a goal so that you stay motivated and keep that goal in your sight. If you just kind of go willy-nilly and say, I'm going to eat healthier and be a little bit more healthy, well, what does that mean? And how long are you going to stick with that? But if you get some specific goals that are measurable, achievable, and realistic, put a time frame on them, folks at Ochsner know that you can make those goals happen. You got a couple more days to let loose. Let loose today. Let loose New Year's Eve. Maybe New Year's Day, too. That's a holiday. By the time we crank things up on the 2nd, or maybe that Monday on the 5th, we'll be ready to push off the dock here with some wellness in 2026. That's thanks to the folks at Ochsner Health.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
Go to the Jim's Firearm Sightline. Glen West, senior editor, Go 24/7. Good enough to give us time on Tuesdays. One more time here in 2025. Glen, how are you?
Doing well, Hunt. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite nicely. The first segment of my show today kind of went through LSU's roster as it stands today, with the understanding it could be massively different 4 days from now with who's in the portal or somebody comes back out of the portal or draft decisions and all that kind of stuff. But just as a general thought, Is there a position or two that you feel like LSU is in good shape moving into the portal season, or is it kind of we got to fix everything?
I think they're in pretty good shape at corner. If they're able to retain most of their cornerbacks, it's a young group, but also a very talented group. And I honestly, I would say linebacker too. I think there's a lot of talent and a lot of young depth, but I'm not saying that you don't address linebacker, because depending on what Weeks does, you're probably going to need some veteran experience in there regardless. And so, but the depth and the quality of talent in those two rooms, I think, is pretty strong. I love, obviously, the incoming freshman defensive lineman, but you still need some experience in that room. So most of these positions are on the defensive side of the ball, where you've done a good job of building kind of a younger core there over the last couple of years with Blake Baker and his staff. But offensively, I think you're looking at a position group at every position group is going to need some serious infusion of talent, not only from a starter perspective, but also from a depth and a competition perspective as well.
It's wild on the defensive line because they've got 10 guys that could come back next year. I'll quickly rattle them off and get your thoughts here on what needs to happen. But you got Don McKinley, you got Buddy Mathis, then you got Brandon Brown and Zion Williams. Sean Washington still got another year. And then on the edge, C.J. Jackson, Damian Shanklin, Gabe Relaford, Kalaj Cobbins, Dylan Carpenter. It's a lot of people. That's 10 guys, plus the class you mentioned where 4 come in the freshman class. That's 14 already, but I don't know if it's like a championship level 14. So, like, what do you do there?
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a few more portal entries if I had to guess on that group. And I would think that LSU probably is very aggressive in signing a couple of edge pass rushers in the portal. I think that's kind of where you have to start with that defensive line. And then you certainly look at the defensive tackle group, and Bernard Gooden and Jacobian Guillory are a couple guys that are moving on from the program, veteran experience talent there. I would expect LSU to be aggressive in going to sign at least one, if not more, interior linemen. But I do kind of like some of the younger pieces in that program, in that defensive line room. I mean, I think they just signed Shanklin, and they really are high on his long-term potential. And some of the other guys that they've brought in over the last couple of years, I think, are talented. But really, for me, I think the core of this group, when you look at it, and I know it's not, something that you have to really, or you can really bank on in year one, but just this freshman group of defensive linemen is just going to be really, really important. They're ready to play because I do think that LSU is going to be asking at least one or two of them to play some snaps next year, whether it's Lamar Brown, Deuce Geralds, Trenton Henderson, or Richard Anderson. So that's a good nucleus there when you build for the future. But yeah, I'm certainly in that boat too. That there's a lot of guys, but there's just not a whole lot of proven experience right now with that defensive line.
All right, let's go over to the offense. You talked about a number of positions. Let's start at running back. Like, what does your gut tell you the next 3 weeks look like at running back for LSU?
My gut says that they probably are in that 2 to 3 range in terms of adding running backs. I think if you're able to return one of Harlan Berry and Caden Durham, that's a win. I'm not sure if you can get both back and then also be super aggressive for a potential star running back or a couple of really big contributing running backs. So I think that LSU is going to work really hard to get Harlan back. I think that's obviously conversations that are already ongoing, but I think that you're looking at a pretty major overhaul there with potentially 2, maybe even 3 guys that LSU has to go land in the portal.
And then at wide receiver, the names that I wrote down are Kyle Parker, Nick Anderson, Destin Hill, Phillip Wright, and Teron Francis. That's 5. And I would be surprised if all 5 of those guys were on the field, were on the roster when LSU played Clemson. So you're pretty light on numbers there. You signed 3 in the freshman class, but I think it's similar to last year where LSU went hard to find playmakers there. You feel like they're headed that direction again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably 2 or 3 at the wide receiver position as well. And I mean, just rattling off all these numbers in your head, and it's like, man, they better hit on most of these guys because there's going to be a lot of turnover with this roster. But I trust Lane Kiffin and this offensive staff a lot. I mean, like they've proven that they can go in and find impact talent at all these positions. One guy that I think I would probably keep an eye on from a receiver perspective is the Ole Miss wideout Winston Watkins. I think he's somebody that is very close with Kiffin and that staff, and he's caught 25, 26 passes as a true freshman. And so he could be kind of a burner for you if you're able to, if he ultimately decides to go in the portal after his freshman season's over. But they're going to be looking to add more talent there too. And honestly, I like some of these pieces they have. Like, I like Carl Parker. I think he showed you something there in the Texas Bowl, but I've always kind of liked him as kind of a, just kind of a durable, reliable piece for the wide receiver room. I still think Nick Anderson has talent, and he's been injury plagued these last couple of years. But if he can find a way to get back to close to his Oklahoma form, I think that what Kiffin's scheme and what this offense could do for him is really intriguing. And then a guy like Teron Francis and Destin Hill, I think, are two guys that are pieces in this program that you could use and see coming back next year and having a role with this offense. So I do think they need to go add some starter experience, but I also think that they have some okay pieces that you can at least use in this scheme and use in this offense next year.
If I include all three running backs, that includes Durham, Berry, and JT Lindsey. If I include Braylon Moore, if I include Whit Weeks, like all those guys baked in, I've got 47 potential returners and then 14 signees. That's only 61 being generous. You could have 56, 57 at this point.
Yeah.
How many transfer portal guys do you think they're going to add?
I did this experiment. I've done this exercise a lot over the last couple of weeks, just kind of writing down the minimum and maximum. I think the minimum I could see is like 18, 19, and then the maximum I had was 25, 26. Like, I think that's kind of the range that they go for because at a lot of these positions, you're not only going to be looking for quality starters, but you have to also kind of build up the depth chart back in those rooms a little bit too. I mean, quarterback, you didn't mention quarterback there. If Michael Van Buren comes back, you're still going to have to, probably go sign two more quarterbacks. And if Michael Van Buren leaves, you're going to probably need to, completely rebuild that room and go get three guys. So I think it's going to be very interesting how they allocate that money. That's what the last several weeks have been like, I think, for Lane Kiffin and Billy Glasscock, and they're just kind of laying out all their potential options. But for me, I kind of see kind of the minimum 18, 19, and then maximum 25, 26, and unless you're talking about adding just guys to help fill out the roster on at the end of it. I think 25, 26 is kind of incorporating the guys that you could bring in and see maybe competing for playing time or being, for sure starters.
LSU hammered Southern Miss last night in the PMAC to finish their non-conference 12-1. They go to College Station coming up on Saturday. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it was a good win last night. They had 19 assists on 32 makes. It was very much kind of the bread and butter of this offense when they're clicking. They had some guys hitting some outside shots. 5 different players hit threes. Dedon Thomas hit a couple, which is really important for me to see. I think he's going to have to play a much larger role from the perimeter as a outside scorer for LSU in conference play. I'm still a little skeptical on the depth behind the starting five. I mean, the starting five scored, I think, 79 of your 90 points last night, and there wasn't a whole ton of reliability from the bench, but they're going to continue to try to develop that and build that depth up. But that starting five is going to have to take on a lot of minutes, and I think it's going to be important that not only do they not get in foul trouble, but they also stay healthy and all that stuff. But I think it's a starting five in a group that can compete with most in the SEC, or at least the top, or at least half of the SEC. But there's still certainly some concerns that you look at going into this thing that you could see it going either way as to how successful that they are in conference play, in my opinion.
I think it's going to be interesting, and that's better than we've seen in a few of these years. So I think that's a positive, and we'll see just how well they can play probably in the last 5-6 minutes of a lot of games, and that'll probably determine where they are at the end of this thing. Glenn, we appreciate some time. What you got?
The thing is the SEC is not as strong as it was last year, and so I do think that there are going to be some teams that maybe were really good last year that LSU can compete with a little bit more this year, and maybe be on the winning end of some of those games. I
think one of those comes up on Saturday. I think they got a chance to go to College Station and win against a team that's not as good. So we shall see. Glenn, we appreciate the time. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again once the portal season cranks up.
Absolutely. Sounds great, Hunt. Thank you for having me.
Glenn West, senior writer, Go 24/7. All your team coverage, they got you covered over there at Go 24/7. I want to remind you about Lifetime Roofing, lifetimeroofingla.com. January 1st, not that far away, 2 days. January 1st, lifetime workmanship warranty from Lifetime Roofing. Lifetime workmanship warranty. You heard that right. It's an amazing offer from the folks at Lifetime Roofing. So give them a call or go online to lifetimeroofingla.com and look into it. You know, everybody thinks about filing an insurance claim or there's a storm. That's when you got to go get a new roof. But sometimes you just need a new roof. Maybe you're selling your home, or maybe you just don't feel like you have an adequate roof at the moment. It's pretty important. Your house is a big investment, and the people in it are the most important thing in your life. Well, Lifetime Roofing is happy to help you out with a retail roof. They can make that happen, and they can finance it for you. 0% for 18 months, same as cash. So if you're looking to finance a roof or looking to finance a deductible because there has been an event and you are getting insurance involved, Lifetime Roofing has a claims department that can help you with that, and you can finance that deductible. Check them out online at lifetimeroofingla.com. That's lifetimeroofingla.com. We'll come back and close out the hour looking at ESPN's all-rookie team. Saints showing up big. We'll talk about it.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Hey, what about my friends at Fabry Chevrolet GMC? They're on Highway 61 in St. Francisville. Just opened up shop, new ownership on October the 1st. But you know the Fabry name. They've been here better than 3 decades, working on a 4th. You get great customer service, great deals, and a great experience, whether it's buying or in the service department. Remind you, their service department there at Fabry Chevrolet GMC, Highway 61 in St. Francisville, services all makes in the service department. So if you've got a road trip coming up or you just got something that's not quite right with your ride and you're up in the St. Francisville area, go in the service department. Let them check it out. They got a great inventory, huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. You can find it all online if you want to at FabryChevrolet.com, or you can make that short drive to St. Francisville and check them out on Highway 61. It's Fabry Chevrolet GMC. They're online at FabryChevrolet.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. Looking for land to hunt or build? Call Daryl May Remax Partners.
All right, wrapping up the hour here. Tuesday show is brought to you by Daryl May Remax Partners. ESPN came out with their all-rookie team with 1 week to go. Best first-year players by position. And I was like, okay, well, that's something that the Saints might be featured pretty prominently in. Let's go check it out. And they were. Right now, the Saints have 4 first-year players listed on this team. You got Tyler Shuck, who is, and they do first and second team in some instances, and Shuck is second team right behind Cam Ward. And I think that if you polled 20 people in the league, I think Shuck might get a nod there. Now, it's not a slam dunk. Ward was great on Sunday, and he's played much better in November, December than he did in September, October, which you'd expect. And Shuck was on the bench for that. So Ward deserves a little bit of that. But, I mean, Shuck, in terms of Rookie of the Year odds, is in a better spot there. And I think everyone in New Orleans feels really good about that. He was on the second team. The left tackle on this team, Kelvin Banks. Now, you're not going to have a ton of rookie left tackles. It's not something that happens all the time. But if you look at Pro Football Focus grades, you look at what people who watch tape for a living think, Kelvin Banks has had a good rookie year. Would I call it dominant? No. Would I call it serviceable? Yeah. Would I call it encouraging? Yeah, I would. I think that the Saints did a good job on that draft pick. When you pick that high in the draft and you got a lot of needs and you double up, because you had taken, was tripling up. You had taken Penning, then you had taken Fuaga, and then you went Banks. You need a hit. And it looks like there's a good chance that they did. Kelvin Banks is listed as the left tackle. Quincy Riley, first-team cornerback on this list. I think Quincy Riley has done some really good things this year. He's shown up, made some plays on the football. The Saints defense before last week, where they got gashed a little bit at times, has played great football, and he's been a part of it. And you consider the fact that Quincy Riley is a 4th-round pick who didn't get his first start until week 5. He hasn't given it up. He's been a starter since then. And so I think that's a really, really good thing. Alontae Taylor has 1 more year left on that deal. So you may see Quincy Riley usurp that role, or, you know, they decide to pay Taylor and do a little something different with him. But Quincy Riley's been very good. You get some ESPN recognition from that. And then Jonas Sanker, who, you know, the Saints took in the 3rd round as well. He's been really good in a lot of different aspects. You read this piece and they say he's been a premier communicator and coverage player. The film guys that are watching say he takes great angles, rarely false steps, doesn't get fooled by route distributions, looks like a 10-year vet, but has the spry legs of a rookie, which allows him to play, makes plays sideline to sideline. You notice Jonas Sanker when you watch the Saints play. That's something I like in defensive players. Like, I don't want to notice the offensive linemen. I want to notice the defensive guys. And you notice Jonas Sanker. So any way you want to slice it, to have 4 draft picks on this list of the best or second best at their position among the rookie class is huge for this team. We sat here before this draft and went, they have to hit on this draft. You simply must. And that's before we knew they were taking a quarterback. When you take a quarterback, that has to be a hit. And it looks like it is. Banks at left tackle. Consider the fact that the Saints could be in a spot where they've got rookie deals at quarterback and left tackle for multiple seasons. That is such an advantageous spot to be in. And if you can hit on one more of these and find yourself 3 or 4 more starters on the cheap and roll some of these contracts off the book that are in their mid-30s and they're out there, it can be closer than we thought in August. It can be closer than we thought in November. It could be close. This is not Homer, Louisiana media talking about the Saints rookies playing better by his eye. This is ESPN evaluating the entire league, watching a ton of tape with advanced metrics. They're telling you Shuck, Banks, Riley, and Sanker are as good as anybody in the league at that position as a rookie. That's huge. Now you got to do it again. Got to find a way to do it again. That's it for hour number 1 here on this Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Daryl May of RE/MAX Partners. Come back in hour 2, talk some LSU hoops, and we'll have Sharif talking Saints as well. Also, I got a college football playoff preview next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust. Started up in 1910. World's changed a little bit since 1910. First American Bank and Trust, still right here in Southeast Louisiana, 115, working on 116 years later. Why do business with a local bank? I'll tell you this all the time, because you're dealing with people that are right here in your community. You're dealing with people who know you. You're dealing with people whose kids go to school with your kids, who attend church with you. You're dealing with people who have made their home here in Southeast Louisiana. And you might think, well, that makes you kind of a mom and pop shop. Like, this is a pretty big loan I'm looking for. Can you handle that? Well, they got 25 locations. They've got the ability to handle your commercial loan. They've got the ability to handle your residential loan. Deal with First American Bank and Trust, one of their 25 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana. All the decisions are made right here. It's First American Bank and Trust. They want to wish you a happy new year at First American Bank and Trust.